We're going to be on the fifth hindrance tonight. Someone brought it up the other day um, and asked me if I was going to talk about doubt. And I hadn't really thought about it, but I guess I would have thought about it once I had to figure out what I was going to talk about. But yeah, the fifth hindrance, doubt, really, it's a good one as hindrances go. Um, but we should start with some meditation. And so I hope everyone is safe and well and that your air is breathable. Uh, we've had kind of an off and on day today in Berkeley. We had bad air in the morning and then it got good in the afternoon. So my wife was able to go swimming in the bay. Always good. It always gets her in a good mood. So we support that. Um, what else can I report? The retreat is going great. As I mentioned, a couple people are here. It's very interesting teaching a retreat like this. And as my wife pointed out, I shouldn't bring her into this, but anyway, I usually start out retreats saying, I never want to teach a retreat again. And then once it gets going, I'm like, hey, this is really great. So I had a good day with it. I gave a really good talk. You should have been there. Oh, well, some people were there. Darn. Now they can tell the truth. So, um, so we'll sit. We sit for those who are new to this. If there are any who are new to this group. We usually sit for about 20 minutes. So I will keep track of the time and you can just relax and I will give some meditation instruction for folks to just to keep I'll try to give you something to listen to instead of your own head. So starting with a posture that's conducive to alertness and clarity. So usually upright is good, although it's perfectly fine to meditate lying down, just a little more likely to get sleepy. You can close your eyes or just lower your gaze if you prefer. Some people like to have their eyes a little bit open. And just dropping into the body, letting your attention just come into your body to feel yourself sitting. It's not something we ordinarily do. So at first, if you're not used to it, it might be hard to figure out what it even means to feel yourself sitting. So it really just means to feel the sensations in your body. And since you are sitting, then you are feeling the sensations of your body as you are sitting. So even though we're sitting still, you'll find that there's movement. There's movement within the body, in the breath, in the heart, the bloodstream, in the nervous system, energy moving throughout the body. So this is part of feeling yourself sitting. The stillness and the movement. And having a sense just of releasing, softening the body. So even though you're upright, you can feel yourself being drawn downward. Drawn to the earth by gravity. So we start with this just general awareness of the body, and opening then to sounds, just welcoming sounds in your environment. The sound of my voice, the sound in your own ears. Feeling the body, listening to sounds. Noting your mood and energy, how you're feeling. And then bringing the attention to the breath. Feeling the sensations of breathing. And you might start by having awareness of the whole breath as it moves through the body. And then focusing on a particular area of sensation with the breath, either around the nostrils or the belly. So at the nostrils, we feel the touch of air coming in and out. In the belly, we feel the movement rising and falling, expanding and contracting. The breath becomes our anchor, our primary focus. But there's also a sense of openness in the background. So we're not sort of constricting the mind around the breath, not trying to block out everything else. It's more of a sense that the breath is in the foreground, and then body, sound, mood, this is all in the background. Then, of course, there are thoughts, often very persistent, so that even trying to pay attention to the breath can seem unmanageable. If the mind is very busy, it can feel like we're being swept away. What we try to do is come back and feel the breath again. Try to let the breath kind of cut through the thoughts, calm the body. But if that isn't really working, if there's too much agitation, then what can be most useful is to turn the attention toward the feeling of agitation, the disturbance. Well, it's not so much that you're being mindful of the thoughts, but rather at the reverberations that the thoughts are causing. So I think of that as energy, can be called mood or emotion, or simply agitation. But it's felt through the body. Might not exactly be a sensation, but in the same way that we can feel anxiousness in the pit of our belly, or anger in our face, we kind of feel the energy of that agitated emotion through the body. The thoughts might still be churning, but we're not really looking at them so much as just breathing with the feeling. So the breath is still involved in this if you're working with this type of process. We're still feeling the breath, but our primary focus then is the agitation, the disturbance, that emotional energy. And this is a practice that takes some time to develop, but it can actually have great benefit both on the cushion and off in daily life. To learn how to ride with our feelings, ride with the emotions, without being swept away. as the mind begins to settle and the body begins to settle, it becomes possible to pay even closer attention to the sensations of breath. When the disturbances of mind have passed, the clarity can come that allows us to see an almost microscopic experience of the breath. All right. Welcome again, everyone. Hi, Olivia. I was just thinking about you during the meditation. I was like, oh, Olivia hasn't been here in a while, so there you are. That's nice. Um, yeah. So, yeah, just as I mentioned, I'm part of a teaching team teaching a retreat for Southern Dharma right now, and so that we're going on East Coast time. So uh, that ends at around six in the evening, and so it's nice to be able to have this regular group as well. And as I said, I'm going to talk about the fifth hindrance. So just to put this a little bit in context, um, as I've been ostensibly this class, I'll call it, is an exploration of my book One Breath at a Time, and um, and I guess for the last couple of weeks I've strayed a bit from the text, shall we say, uh, and kind of been going off into some more detail on some of the topics. So we're in step 4 and looking at inventory and various ways to think about inventory from a Buddhist standpoint. And so the idea of the 5 hindrances are these 5 qualities that arise in the mind and body that are seen as being blocks to the development of concentration, the development of insight, and really we can see them as blocks to happiness and harmony in our lives. So the 5 hindrances are sensual desire, aversion, or anger, resentment, what's called sloth and torpor, so sleepiness, and then restlessness and doubt. So that you can see there's mental components, physical components. But when we're meditating, a lot of the time, or kind of assaulted by these, we become particularly aware of them. Obviously, we have all these things when we're not meditating, but when we're meditating and we're trying to kind of develop clarity of mind and concentration, we can become sort of more acutely aware of the fact that these things are blocking us from having that kind of clarity. So that's why I think of them as a kind of inventory. Like in meditation, we're kind of taking an inventory of our mind state in each moment, and then learning how to work with them, explore them, understand them is a great help, both in meditation and outside of meditation. And further, the 5 hindrances have direct connections to addiction. Certainly desire, sensual desire, is a core element of addiction. Aversion, also, like not liking things, being averse, wanting things to be different, also very much tied into addiction. And sleepiness or laziness, restlessness, agitation, these things are more like the physical components, but that work into our addiction. And so we've come to doubt. And before I talk about doubt in terms of recovery, and I might actually read a little from the book tonight. So as I said, I haven't been doing that much lately. But I want to start just first by locating doubt in the traditional Buddhist framework and why it's considered a hindrance. Because I think that's actually quite different from a lot of the ways that I think doubt is more important to us in our lives. But in the Buddhist framework, doubt is essentially, primarily it's about doubting the teachings. And it's sort of like, oh, in the Buddhist time, it would be like, oh, I don't believe the Buddha. I'm going to go listen to this other guru, or what he's saying about suffering, that's not true. Or everything isn't impermanent. I don't believe that. And so the antidote, the main traditional antidote, and I'll get out my little reference on this, is a clarification of the discourses through questioning and good knowledge of the discourses. So in other words, in order to overcome your doubt, they suggest you should study further, which sort of seems to imply that if you just understood this, then you wouldn't doubt it, which I find a little alienating, frankly, that idea. If you just understood, it's sort of like if you just weren't so stupid, you wouldn't uh, doubt this. Maybe that's just my rebellious nature. Um, but I think that studying the teachings, the Buddhist teachings, whether it's the discourses or just generally studying Buddhism, is extremely valuable. And to neglect that and just to meditate is to really miss out on understanding the wholeness and the fullness of what's being offered. But as an antidote to doubt, I'm a little skeptical. What I will say, so anyway, I'll put that aside for now, and say that what's more common, in my experience, with meditators is not so much that they doubt the teachings, but they doubt their own ability to meditate or to become enlightened or whatever, or to attain anything. And this is where I think there's much more of a problem, and one that can really benefit from honest self-evaluation, aka inventory, to really look at the self-criticism and to really ask, are you really bad at this? Are you really not getting anything out of this? Are you exceptionally incompetent when it comes to meditation? And there I would say that the way that we find out, the way we can answer that question is to actually listen to a teacher, typically, or especially, or as well, to listen to fellow students. And once we hear more broadly what people's experiences are with meditation, most of us realize, oh, it's not that I'm bad at this, it's that meditation is difficult, and that it not only, and difficult is maybe a simplification. Meditation has many contours and textures to it, and that if I have a few moments of stillness and quiet, that's actually quite meaningful. And that if my mind is wandering a lot of the time, but it's coming back, if I'm learning to navigate this, if I understand, I have some sense of what I'm doing, you start to realize, oh, yeah, I do have some confidence at this. So that's one way, one kind of an antidote is to kind of understand the practice more thoroughly, understand the challenges in it. But the other way to overcome that doubt is, in fact, to practice more. Because once we have had a few kind of breakthrough moments of meditation, and they might be just moments, but even just a few moments of a kind of shift in consciousness or a shift in the felt experience of mind and body, just getting that glimpse gives us a lot of confidence. We realize, oh, I've had a taste. It's not that I'm going to be able to get into some meditative state and just always be there, or every time I sit down to meditate, I'm going to have this great experience. It's just that we become more familiar with the range of experiences, and we have some taste of the pleasant, and we start to learn how to navigate with the difficult, and it starts to become a familiar landscape for us. And that's when I think we gain the most confidence, and self-doubt is really starts to be overcome. But it's true that doubt is very subtle. And for a long time, I felt like I didn't have much doubt. And at one point, I would, I've often gone on self-retreats over the years because, I've been practicing for a long time, and sometimes I just find it's simplest to just go to a cabin in the woods and meditate on my own. And I was preparing for this some years ago to go on a self-retreat. And what I was doing in my mind was planning my schedule, like in a very detailed way. Now I was going to be alone, and there was no need for me to have a detailed schedule. But what I realized was that I doubted my own, even though I'd been on many self-retreats and been on many retreats and always had been a very disciplined meditator, kind of always followed the schedule, that I had this doubt of my own, commitment, that I doubted that I could trust myself to just say, I don't need a schedule. I'm just going to go. I'm going to meditate. When I feel like the meditation's over, I'll do some walking. When I feel like it's time for lunch, I'll have lunch. But I saw that this need to kind of control it and schedule it was this subtle form of doubt. So to see that the doubt can be one of the very subtle hindrances. So let me read a little bit from One Breath at a Time. Oh, and I wanted to mention this. This is secret information. I'm not supposed to advertise this, but I'm going to consider this sharing, not advertising. But I was informed by my publisher that Amazon is going to have a special, typical, right? Amazon. Anyway, of One Breath at a Time in Kindle. For they have this thing of one day. What's it called? A Kindle daily deal on One Breath at a Time, where you'll be able to get, if you don't have the book on Kindle, on September 17th, you'll be able to get it for $1.99. Now, I presume that means I'll get nothing, but, since I'm just a bodhisattva who is happy to give it away, that's fine with me. But no, it's actually, it's my wife tells me it's a really good thing. Well, I don't know. I guess it promotes it. But anyway, they said, you're not supposed to promote this because Amazon likes to make it like a surprise. I don't know why. That seems dumb, but Amazon's probably smarter about marketing than I am. They're a slightly larger company than the Kevin Griffin organization. So, although size isn't everything. So, in any case, moving right along. 9/17, the Kindle daily deal. Don't miss it. Okay. Okay. So this is on page 106 of One Breath at a Time. I don't know what page it'll be on in the Kindle version. I don't have that version. When I first learned about the hindrances, doubt seemed like the easy one. Desire, how could I ever get over that? On retreat, I'd experienced desire, aversion, sleepiness, and restlessness, all in the same sitting period, the so-called multiple hindrance attack. But doubt seemed less threatening. That's why I couldn't understand at first why my teachers said that ultimately it was the most dangerous hindrance. In fact, for an alcoholic or addict, denial is a form of doubt. Many people never get sober because they aren't willing to accept the possibility that they have a real problem for which there is a solution. And many others, perhaps most tragically, lose their sobriety when their doubt becomes so strong that they decide to drink or use again. I don't know if I'm really an alcoholic is often the prelude to drinking. As one friend in recovery pointed out, why is it that the first thing people do when they decide they aren't alcoholics is go out and drink? Some aspects of our culture support doubt. As I talked about in step 3, when we identify completely with the scientific materialism of contemporary society, we can become closed to anything new at all. The over-reliance on, quote, objective reasoning discounts subjective experience. Roger, who came to a weekly group I was leading, would often take the discussion off on intellectual and philosophical tangents. His skepticism made it difficult for him to accept certain Buddhist tenets. While I engaged him on some of these points, I also encouraged him to sit more, to simply have the direct experience of what the Buddha was talking about. He took my advice and went on retreat, as well as continuing a regular daily practice. He's still very engaged intellectually in the Dharma, but two things have changed. He understands that his intellect cannot always grasp truth, capital T, that if he remains open to possibilities outside of his own immediate understanding, that he develops a deeper and broader view. And he approaches discussion more gently, as he's become more aware of the effect of his words and attitude on others. This points up how practice shapes us. Through deepening meditation, we gain wisdom and pliability, and our behavior modulates toward kindness and compassion. Bill Wilson, the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, talks about contempt prior to investigation as the great danger in spiritual growth. Another problem is contempt after limited investigation, particularly because the initial stages of meditation are so difficult. Some people give up before they experience the benefits. The Dalai Lama famously suggested that we shouldn't try to measure our growth over short periods, but rather judge our meditation practice by how much it's changed in 5 or 10 years. This is a strategy for overcoming doubt. The longer view almost certainly will show significant change. Of course, it could also be a trick to get people to practice, since you'd have to be at it for at least 5 years before you'd question the value. That's my cynicism kicking in there. Just, never trust the Dalai Lama, I don't know what he's trying to get us to do here. He's got something up his sleeve. So now I'll take another shift here, and this is something I was looking at today, and I may read some other pieces on it. As we become more comfortable with doubt, it can turn into what's called in the Zen tradition, great doubt. That's capital G, capital D. This is the doubt of the don't know mind I discussed in step 3. Great doubt, rather than being a rational dismissal of possibilities, is a radical opening to possibilities. In this way, instead of looking for answers to our difficult philosophical questions, we try to take a broader view that many answers are possible, that the answers may change from day to day or moment to moment, and that by continually questioning, our understanding has the potential to continually grow. For as soon as we settle for one answer, as soon as we think we've got something figured out, that's when we stop learning. Instead, we see each answer as provisional, based on the information we have right now and our own ability to see clearly. As we get more information and penetrating wisdom deepens, our answers may change. So, this is kind of a broad range of things that you can sort of look at with doubt. The primary one is the way that doubt undermines us, both as spiritual practitioners and as people in recovery. And certainly as a hindrance, that's where I think we really have to, keep our eyes out, keep our eyes open for that kind of undermining. And again, I think it's so common for us to have self-doubt that I think that's like one of the major challenges for people. And certainly, the doubt about whether you are an alcoholic or an addict or whatever, is so persistent. And it's, and for those of you who have been around a while, which I know many of you have, you're very familiar with seeing that in newcomers or people who haven't even made it yet. And working in treatment centers, You see this very persistently. And, my standard response now to this question when somebody's kind of, I don't know if I'm really an alcoholic, is to say, I don't think it's really important how you identify yourself. The question is, you know, is alcohol causing problems in your life? And even more simply, the way I like to talk about it in my own experience is when I was drinking and using, I had problems and I couldn't deal with them. I couldn't grow through them. In recovery, I continue to have problems, but I can deal with them on a daily basis. And that to me is there's no doubt about that. That's clear. Whether I identify as, I mean, I was never in treatment, so I was never diagnosed as an alcoholic. So, but I don't care. The identity isn't important because there is no doubt about the fact that my life is better without it. And that's, I think, when we're dealing with people who are sort of struggling with that, and often it's kind of struggling in a kind of sort of resentful and don't tell me I'm an alcoholic kind of way. I think it's good to just dance around that question and get straight to the more relevant question is how's it going? The second part of step one, is your life really manageable? Are you finding yourself growing and finding more happiness? But this other piece about great doubt, I find very interesting. And again, it's kind of like flipping the whole thing on its head, which is sort of typical of Zen. Say, oh, you're saying doubt's a hindrance? It's not a hindrance. It's good. And so where I guess I've read the most about that, not a whole lot, but is in this book by Stephen Batchelor called The Faith to Doubt. And I believe it was his first book, certainly one of his first books. No, he had done some others. I take it back. But, and it's kind of a book of essays and some stories about his own practice and kind of evolution as a practitioner, because he started doing Tibetan Buddhism and was ordained as a Tibetan monk, and then he became disillusioned with that and got interested in Theravadan Buddhism and Zen, and studied and ordained as in Korean Zen. But the first chapter in this book is called The Faith to Doubt, which is, again, this kind of paradoxical title, The Faith to Doubt. So I'll read a little bit of it. He says, the Chinese adage is great doubt, great enlightenment, little doubt, little enlightenment, no doubt, no enlightenment. And as he says, this would make very little sense to a Theravadan or a Tibetan. But then he quotes Japanese Zen master Takasui, 17th century. You must doubt deeply again and again, asking yourself what the subject of hearing could be. Pay no attention to the various illusory thoughts and ideas that may occur to you. Only doubt more and more deeply, gathering together in yourself all the strength that is in you, without aiming at anything or expecting anything in advance, without intending to be enlightened, without even intending not to be enlightened. Become like a child within your own breast. That is great doubt, so-called, according to Keiji Nishitani, because it refers to, quote, the consciousness of our mode of being and way of existing in response to the great matter of birth and death. Such doubt is neither a cognitive hinge nor a psychological defect, but a state of existential perplexity. It is not resolved through adopting a set of beliefs and achieving a pseudo-certainty, but deliberately intensified or, quote, coagulated, as the texts say, into a, quote, mass of doubt. In other words, the deepest doubts or questions you have about existence are realized to be the key, which, if turned correctly and with the right force, can open the door to their response. This existential perplexity is the very place within us where awakening is the closest. To deny it and adopt a comforting set of beliefs is to renounce the very impulse that keeps one on track. Doubt is central to the spiritual crisis many people find themselves in today. The beliefs of traditional religion have been undermined. It is often doubt we experience as the core of our spiritual awareness. Such doubt is not merely uncertainty about the claims of a particular spiritual tradition, but doubt about what is the meaning of our existence in this world. It is precisely this kind of doubt that Zen takes up and channels toward awakening. In this sense, the Zen path of doubt has a tantric dimension. Just as in India and Tibet, desire and other kleshas, the other kind of hindrances, were transformed into the path, so in Zen, doubt is transformed into the path. So Tantra means to transform one thing into another. Obviously, that's what transformation is. The energetic power of what is conventionally conceived of as an obstacle, a defilement or delusion, is thus used as a vehicle for freedom and illumination. The Zen tradition often speaks of three factors that need to be cultivated along the path: great faith, great doubt, and great courage. Thus, faith and doubt are brought together. Clearly, doubt in this context does not refer to the kind of wavering indecision in which we get stuck, preventing any positive movement. It means to keep alive the perplexity at the heart of our life, to acknowledge that fundamentally we do not know what is going on, to question whatever arises within us. The acceptance of such doubt as basic to Buddhist practice qualifies the meaning of faith. Faith is not equivalent to mere belief. Faith is the condition of ultimate confidence that we have the capacity to follow the path of doubt to its end. And courage. Courage is the strength needed to be true to ourselves under all conditions, to cast aside the obstacles that are constantly thrown in our way. Whew. So that's one of those things you probably could read a few times to take it in. But there's a great, obviously, I mean, to me, there's a great beauty in the way he's characterizing that, and the way he's intermingling these ideas. One of the simplest ways, though, to think of great doubt is to say, what do we really know? And to ask yourself, what do you know? What do you know to be true? One of the things that we believe we know is what's going to happen next. In a very real terms, like what we all are thinking now is that this class is going to go along for a certain period of time, and then it's going to be over, and then you are going to something. Like you probably have some idea that you're going to, go to bed or read a book or watch TV or take a walk. We always have this idea of a future that is waiting for us and that we have some agency in creating. And through much of our life, that can appear to be true until something happens and something breaks. I think I can safely say that none of us thought that our lives were going to be what they are today just 6 months ago. And that we all imagined we had plans. I was going to be in North Carolina this weekend. I was probably not that far from buying a plane ticket, because I believed I knew what was going to happen. But this idea of doubt, of great doubt, and one of the problems with this idea that I know what's going to happen is that we don't pay attention. We take things for granted. We take the world as it is for granted. And this is why the typical story of the person who gets a fatal diagnosis all of a sudden says, everything is so precious. The flowers are so sweet, and the people I love are so precious to me, and every moment is so precious, because all of a sudden they don't imagine a future for themselves anymore. All they can see, all they have, they recognize that all they have is now, which is, of course, always true, but only becomes blindingly apparent in those circumstances, or when we have a spiritual awakening. So that's like one of the purposes of this practice, mindfulness practice. What do we teach people to do in mindfulness? To pay very close attention to the present moment, to be here now. It's such a cliche, but we miss it. And if we don't assume we know what's going to happen next, if we have this, you referred to that childlike attitude of, wow, it's all like a wonder, then every moment is precious, because we all do have a diagnosis, a fatal diagnosis, right? So there's a real elegance to this practice of doubt, and in that very simple way. Now, as Stephen Batchelor, just again, the author of that piece, I mean, he's an intellectual, he's a brilliant guy, and he's really worth reading. But as he wants to do and does, he's pushing us towards looking more deeply at, as he says, existential questions. And that kind of doubt, again, can open up a very powerful spiritual awakening when we really question what we believe and how we understand the meaning of our lives and the purpose of our lives. So, doubt. It's really a rich topic to reflect on in these layered ways, and to see. And I like the way Batchelor he has a very broad understanding of it, and I appreciate that he can kind of talk about the different angles. As with so much of spiritual teachings, and as well as spiritual practice, there are these kind of competing dimensions, and to sort of absorb and live the fullness of these teachings, we need to be able to hold these competing dimensions, the practical dimension of doubt and how it undermines us and how it works against us, but then also to hold this other way that doubt becomes an inspiration and a guiding principle in our lives. So I really encourage you to work it on both those levels. Don't neglect one or the other. To neglect the self part of it, the self-doubt, is to kind of do a spiritual bypass. To kind of be like, oh well, I'm I'm not going to worry about it. I don't have that problem. And as I was talking about with myself, to realize, oh, I didn't think I had much doubt, but then realizing, oh yeah, it's very subtly in there, right? But then also, yeah, to embrace this on the more cosmic level, uh, that's very, illuminating, and I think it is inspiring, and it's so true that there isn't much that we know. I mean, I've been reading a lot about the history of racism, um, and uh, as well as reading several books that kind of American history and the Stamp from the Beginning, with Ibram Kendi's basically history of racist ideas, and then Jill Lepore's book, These Truths. And one of the things that's really striking is that not very long ago, the justification for believing that Africans were inferior to Europeans was the Bible. What was in and that there were beliefs, believing faith that there were what was called polygenesis, that there was Adam and Abel, anyway. I'm not good with the Bible. That they were like the progenitors of white people, and then that Ham, this other like son of Cain, was the black people came from that, and because of that, because we know that to be true because it's in the Bible, and then that's why black people are inferior, and it's like, okay, I mean, it just shows how deluded we can become with our beliefs. And what beliefs do we have today? Does each of us have that are based on really no real, there's no real basis for it. I mean, most of us think of ourselves as rational, and yet, so doubting, great doubt, also is related to our own questioning our own beliefs. I sort of have been reading this stuff so much that it's been really hard for me not to bring it into my teaching. So I guess I kind of forced that in there, but I hope that made sense. So, my dears, it is Friday. Big time. I hope you have big plans for the weekend, party. Let's say going to the, I don't know, grocery store with a mask on, maybe taking a walk with a mask on, maybe riding your bike with a mask on. Yeah, it's going to be a great weekend. So, ay. Yeah. Well, I'm glad we get to hang out together. That's all I can say, As I've said on the retreat, if this pandemic had happened just a few years ago, none of us would be able to go to meetings. There would be no meditation classes. There'd be no retreats. We'd just be stuck. And boy, that would be rough. I mean, we would figure something out, I know, but we'd have to be very creative. But we are very, very fortunate. It's like good news, bad news, right? Good news, there's this incredible technology. Bad news, we really need this incredible technology because we'd go crazy if we didn't have it. So, all right, you guys. So I'll be back on Tuesday, and it looks like, if I'm not mistaken, we might be finally getting over the hindrances and moving on to the precepts, which are maybe more fun than the hindrances. Probably not. But we'll definitely, as the precepts are the next piece in the book. But after that comes what's called positive inventory. And we'll take a long excursion into positivity there, which I know many people will be surprised to see me doing. but I can do it. I'll force myself to do it. All right. Be well, be safe.
Thank you. And just in case people can't see the chat, I just
Oh,
wanted
yeah.
to announce it for those who don't maybe come on Tuesdays that Kevin will be at through Spirit Rock on Friday next week.
Oh, yeah.
So if you go to the Spirit Rock website, you can register to get the Zoom link. It's also in the chat if you're able to access that. But just wanted to announce it for people who might not see that.
Yeah. Thank you, Angela. Good
Yeah.
point.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be
But
middle of September already next week.
right. But remember,
We know,
we
maybe.
we don't
We
know.
don't know. We don't.
So, yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
Good night. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you,
All
Angela.
right. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.